A federal appeals court in our nation's capital has blocked a 17-year-old immigration detainee's request for an abortion in Texas.
CBS News Justice reporter Paula Reed is in Washington. Okay, Paula, what does this mean for this case? And this woman who's about 15 weeks pregnant, came into the country about a month ago, wants an abortion, but while she's detained, the federal government has stopped her.
That's right. The federal government says it does not have to facilitate this abortion by providing transportation to the abortion itself and some of the pre-abortion counseling. Now, the Court of Appeals, she was hoping, would force the government to provide that transportation. But in oral argument earlier today, the Justice Department said that she has two options. One, she can voluntarily return to her home country, or she can find a sponsor here in the U.S., someone to look over her, provide temporary custody while her immigration proceedings go forward. And that person is more than welcome to bring her to that abortion. And that is what the Court of Appeals has said. They said, yes, we are going to give you until October 31st to find a sponsor here in the U.S., and that person can bring you to the abortion. If you can't find a U.S. sponsor by October 31st, they can revisit this, and likely they would force the federal government to provide these services. But right now, it seems like the Justice Department kind of got a win here.
And Paula, during oral arguments Friday morning, Judge Patricia Millett said we're at a point where days matter. How does this affect the timeline of this case?
That's right. The timeline was a big point of contention during oral arguments today. The Justice Department said she was still at the point where she had several weeks where she could still obtain a legal abortion. But her lawyers argue that every day is important, and every day that goes by increases the risk to her health if this abortion is delayed. But here they're giving approximately 10 more days for her to find this U.S. sponsor and obtain this abortion. But clearly the court has also carved in some sort of urgency to this, saying, look, you have until the end of the month, but we're not going to give you any more time to straighten this situation out.
The idea of a sponsor has been brought up earlier. Is this more complicated than it sounds? I would think there are lots of people who support a woman's right to an abortion and would volunteer to drive her to a clinic. Why hasn't that happened already? And do we think it'll be a problem for it to happen in the next 10 days?
Well, that's exactly what the judges were asking during this hearing. And the ACLU said there had been several sponsors that had come forward, but none of them had panned out. And it was becoming increasingly clear during the oral arguments that the judges would perhaps pursue this avenue. But the ACLU was adamant about the timeline. They said, we don't have time to find a U.S. sponsor. We want to get this woman the services, to which even the Justice Department agreed she was constitutionally entitled. They want to get them as soon as possible. But right now, by doing this, by saying, look, we're going to give you another 10 days to find a U.S. sponsor, it takes the pressure off of the courts to have to answer this question of whether or not transportation and filling out paperwork, whether or not that falls under the legal definition of facilitating an abortion. So it's really not a surprise that the judges sort of took this option.
And what sort of precedent does this set for the future, do you think, Paula?
Well, it's an unusual case. It's an unusual argument. And if the Supreme Court decides, if this is appealed to the Supreme Court and they decide to take it up, whatever they decide would be the precedent. But if they take a pass and they're fine with this 10-day plan, then going forward, if this should be argued again, there's going to be a lot of impetus on the woman seeking the abortion to try to expedite that process, to find a sponsor. And that will be the way that she will be able to obtain abortion services.
Paula Reed, thank you.